Hello and welcome to a very, very special episode of UCU Live. And this is one where we are bringing the whole union together. So as you know, ballot papers start landing from today onwards for our further education members across England. Our college members are fighting for better pay, they are fighting for fairer workloads and for meaningful national agreements so that not a single college is left behind. And this time next week, we're also going to see ballot papers landing with our higher education members. Members all across the UK who work in universities, also fighting for pay, but crucially for job security too. I know that balloting and taking action can seem intimidating, and at times it can also seem really lonely. But that is not going to be the case tonight, because tonight we are joined by some of the best trade union leaders across the UK, leaders that are representing hundreds of thousands of members, and we've gathered them here to show their solidarity to you. But I want to start this session by rounding up with a message for our FE and our HE members. Firstly, and as always, do please let us know where you are watching from. Pop it in the comments. Let us know how long you have been a UCU member. Are you even pre-merger? Were you AUT or NATFE? And crucially, do let us know that you are voting yes in this ballot. And if you feel like it, why don't you let us know why you are voting yes in the ballot? And finally, please do feel free to ask us a question or two in the comments. It is great speaking directly to you. We had a brilliant session last week, and that was mainly down to all the amazing comments and questions that we got from you. So please, right away in the comment section now, share this link with your pals. We just had a great branch briefing, so I know that there's people filtering over from that. But for now, let me introduce you to our first guest speaker. He is the General Secretary of a fighting union. He is a friend of UCU. He was elected to lead his union and is already showing that he will be a leading figure in our movement. No better demonstrated than backing a UCU motion earlier this year on wages, not weapons at the TUC. So please welcome the General Secretary of the Fire Brigade Union, Steve Wright. Hi, Steve. Lovely banner behind you there. Steve, you know what our two fights are about, so I was really hoping you could share a message with our members.
Of course. Look, thanks for the invite, Joe, to come and speak, and evening to UCU members. And look, I sit here in the new head office of the Fire Brigade Union, where our Executive Council have met today. We've discussed the issues that UCU members face, and that they tell me to send a strong and clear message of solidarity and support to your members in the fight that you take on. And look, so alongside that solidarity, I'll talk a little bit about why this matters, why your fight that you're taking on matters to our members in the fire service. And some will ask that question, why we're here, why we're supporting. But look, your fight is our fight. And I say that because, look, when you're standing up and fighting for better pay, when you're standing up and fighting for your jobs, for better terms and conditions, that you're standing up for every worker in this country, and that includes the members that I represent. And look, there's a reason why this matters to our members, to firefighters as well, because higher education, further education are crucial for our sector and crucial for society as well. So look, firefighting is a skilled profession, and many of our members will have come through further education, higher education, before joining the fire and rescue service. And like I said, the National Executive today have recognised that and send their full solidarity and support. But I wanted to touch on a couple of other things as well about why what you're fighting for matters to us, because in the Fire Brigade Union, we have a lot of research done on the issues that are affecting our members, and that is done by UCU members in many cases. And some of those areas of work, some of that detailed research that has been conducted is being conducted now, and some that's been conducted in the past. And one that's close to my heart is research that we did into the high rates of cancer in firefighters. And that we know from that research that was done, we are more likely to die of cancer and other illnesses at younger ages than the general public. And I say it matters to me, it's because my dad was a firefighter before me and died early into his retirement of esophagus cancer. My son's now a firefighter working at a busy fire station in Berkshire. And look, it's about protecting those next generation of our members. And we would not have been able to do that without the detailed research that have been done in universities by UCU members. So that's one area of work which is vital to us. But we're also doing research into racism in the fire and rescue service, reviews into that again being conducted by UCU members. And another area of work that I launched this year was around mental health in the fire and rescue service, because we know that there is a mental health crisis in the fire and rescue service and more broadly in blue light services. And so that is something, without the detailed research that is ongoing at the moment, looking into the real detailed high level stuff, we would not be able to campaign on the back of that. And we are a campaigning union, but we need to be focused on where we move our efforts, where we do campaign to make the lives and working lives of our members better. So look, just to say that research that is done is part of our campaigning, and it certainly saves lives. But I mentioned as well why education matters in society. Look, this isn't just about pay in education. And when we fight for pay in the fire service, it's not just about pay for our members. This is about a society I feel that we want to be part of and that we want to live in. So a society where workers are skilled, where they are fairly paid, where they are respected, not casualised and underpaid as they have been in many areas of our society at the moment. And I think for me, I don't think it's too much of a stretch of an imagination at all, is around how education lifts wages. That it does that in our society. It reduces poverty. It brings people out of poverty, giving people real chances in life. And what we do see is when we see cuts and we see low pay, we see a poorer society and a society that doesn't serve the working class, doesn't serve our members, but one that serves billionaires and not working people. So that we need to unapologetically actually fight for better investment, fight for investment in schools, colleges, university, fire stations, the NHS, that strong public services in our communities. That's the society I think that we're fighting for. And I want to build that fight with the likes of Joe, with the likes of your union and other speakers that will be here today. But a new generation actually about taking this fight forward for the next generation of members in our union. But look, what we do see, instead of that investment, we see governments after government, and even the government of today, and where we did, I'm sure, hoped for more when Labour came into power last year, that what we see them doing is not investing in people and squeezing funding. But what we know from when they do squeeze funding, it actually takes money out of our members' pockets, and they attack workers. They reduce the funding, attack workers, attack pay, attack our jobs, and attack our terms and conditions. It's the same old playbook being played out again and again. And look, you will have seen that over the years in education. We've definitely seen it in the fire and rescue service, and we see it across the public sector and public services, which are crumbling and falling apart at the seams. So that is exactly why I feel your ballot is important, not just to your members and yourselves, but it's important to all of us. And the ballot matters because it's about power. It's about sending that strong yes vote, giving your union, giving your members, giving your negotiators a strong mandate to go into there, leverage with the employers and also the government. And it shows you're serious. We've seen that. We've seen that with strong mandates. We've only taken national strike action on 3 occasions. In fact, my family have been part of all of those over the years. But it shows and sends a strong message with this ballot. So look, we know things like the law is stacked against us. We know thresholds, hurdles, everything that comes our way. And whilst we're making progress to try and get rid of that with this government, it's still there, and it's still a fight that we need to have. But look, I'll wrap up by saying some of this. Look, we live in a rich country. There is wealth out there. There is money, but it is certainly in the wrong hands. And I think as trade unionists at the moment, and I'm a firefighter for 25 years, I'm certainly no specialist in economics, but what I do know is the money is certainly there for those that can afford multiple houses, those that come into this country on super yachts, but there is no money to pay you the wages of people that work in further education, in higher education, and in the fire and rescue service. So look, there is a time now, I think, to build that campaign around taxing wealth, taxing the super rich in society, so we can invest in education, we can invest in our health service and all other public services. So let's be unapologetic about what we're fighting for and who the real enemy is around this. So we want to make sure that every school, every college, every university, every fire station is properly resourced, those that are working in it are properly paid. That's the future I'm fighting for. So look, I'll say it again, that's why this ballot that you're undertaking really matters. And my simple message really is vote yes, but then go a little bit more than that. Encourage your colleagues, encourage your workmates to vote yes as well. Send a strong message that you will not accept cuts, you will not accept low pay, and you will certainly not accept job losses. And look, I think this statement is true as well. History tells us that when you do fight, it gives hope to every other worker in this country. So look, the FBU, we stand with you. We always will. I think solidarity is a word that we use quite a lot, but I think it goes more than that. UCU members have stood on our picket lines. They've supported our campaigns, and we will stand with you wherever this goes and for however long it goes on. We've done that with other workers, and we'll do it with you. So look, thanks again for the invite. Hope I haven't gone on for too long. The full support of our union is right behind you. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And you did not go on at all. That was amazing. And as you know, a long history of FBU on our pickets. And nice to hear that the Wright men have had an intergenerational hat trick on FBU pickets too. We're joined by other guests. Paul Fleming, Equity General Secretary. Hi, Paul. And Daniel Kebede, the General Secretary of the NEU. Who is our next speaker? It is fair to say that Daniel knows all about working in education, but also representing members in education. In fact, he also, like UCU, has extensive experience of representing education workers, including those in post-16. As I say, Daniel is the GS of the NEU. A friend of UCU, and is here to offer you solidarity. Daniel, welcome to our live. It is fair to say that you have had your fair share of ballots and disputes. What is your message to UCU members as we start our ballots?
Oh, well, good evening, Joe, and just a big hello to everybody who is on this call, all of the members in FE who are about to be balloted. Look, it's my view really that you are the point man, for want of a better word, in education at the moment. The imposition of 1.4% pay award is grotesque, and it's absolutely well, beyond the pale, and we stand absolutely with you in pushing back against that, because we all know that that is a real terms pay cut in the context of a sector of education that's been grossly neglected over many years. The gap between your pay and teachers is now growing beyond 7%, and that situation quite simply cannot go on. But what they want to do to you, they want to do to everybody in education. We've had 40 years of neoliberal education policy in which we've seen education become increasingly fragmented, increasingly privatized, and we are seeing a huge race to the bottom in which our students and young people are really fundamentally being denied access to the quality education that they deserve. And it didn't always used to be this way. You know, there used to be investment in education. You can all remember Tony Blair, the last Labour Prime Minister, pledging education, education, education. Under that government, investment in education exceeded the OECD average of 5%. 5.5% was what the last Labour government spent on education. This government is spending well below that, around 3.8, 3.9% of GDP on education. And that means that education has been shortchanged to the sum of £20 billion. Now, we all want to see a prosperous economy and a prosperous society, but to do that, we need a government that values you as educators and education more broadly. And of course, that's absolutely starts in FE, where you develop the skills of the future. So we absolutely stand with you in the NEU. We hope that you are successful in your ballot. And just to echo what Steve said, it's not just enough to vote yes in the ballot yourself, but also encourage your colleagues to do the same, because what they are doing to you, they will want to do to everybody in education. We're facing a multi-year pay award being imposed on us this year in February at some point. It's important that that pay award is restorative. All teachers, all school and college staff deserve a restoration in pay because there is absolutely the wealth in this society to ensure that we can have pay awards that go far enough to avert the crisis in recruitment and retention, which of course is something that is really pronounced at the moment. Look, we need a government that prioritizes education over bombs and weapons and the machinery of destruction. There is the wealth in this society. We need wealth taxes. We need changes to capital gains taxes. And we also need to stop subsidizing fossil fuels so we can spend on education, colleges, and young people. So I'll stop there, Joe, but just a big message of solidarity from us at the NEU.
Thank you. Another brilliant speech as well. And I know one that will really strike a chord with UCU members, particularly around what we should be investing in. So thank you. Next up is another friend of our union and another member of this kind of newer, sometimes younger group of union leaders who are making their mark on our movement. And his speeches at TUC Congress recently brought the house down. Please welcome Paul Fleming, who is the General Secretary of Equity. Paul, you get the gig. Over to you. What's your message for our members?
Thanks, Joe, and thanks to the previous speakers as well, to both Stephen, to Daniel, and to everybody who's on the call. Yes, Equity is a massive, long-time supporter of every single dispute that UCU has had, whether it be in HE or in FE. Why? Well, we know from the experience of our members, many of whom are also UCU members, that without you, there is no performing arts, there is no entertainment industry. There is no ability for young people to be inspired to follow a career in an industry that matters more now than ever, at a time where we're attempting to discern the truth, re-establish a new social contract, build a new society. And this dispute in particular, it has to be said, resonates with our members very deeply. The average income of an Equity member is about £15,000 a year from the industry, so £15,000 a year. So the idea that that your members are cruising towards a low pay disparity in the same way our members are fighting back against feels particularly pertinent. But that point that Daniel made about pay restoration is really, really key for us as well. So in subsidised theatres, the big subsidised houses across the UK, so you might think Birmingham Rep or the Manchester Royal Exchange or the Young Vic in London, all those theatres are paying about 12% less than they were in real terms before the pandemic. That's an extraordinary gap at a time when the amount of work has decreased by 25% since 2017. There's a real crisis in our industries with work drying up due to precarious funding models, due to low pay, and due to an industry that's really, really struggling to keep pace with a destructive government and a chaotic economic strategy. So when UCU members are talking about precarity creeping into their workplaces, intensifying in their workplaces, and pay going down, it's something that our members, whether they be performers, directors, designers, choreographers, clowns, children's entertainers, burlesque artists, striptease artists, and others, they recognise that plight, they recognise that struggle. UCU and UCU members have always been there for us and for our union. It's sometimes really hard for our members to be taken seriously as workers, to be taken seriously as trades unionists. And educators know that battle as well. You're told to just think of the kids. Our people are called lovies. They're told that their views don't matter as working people because they're just a nice little add-on. And increasingly, education is being treated in the same way as well, and nice to have, not a fundamental part of a civilized, growing society with a strong economic backbone that actually is open to all and allows progression for everyone. And that is phenomenally important. We don't have an entertainment industry, we don't have the performing arts without UCU members, and we don't have UCU members without quality pay, quality terms and conditions. And I think it's a matter of urging you the things that every trades unionist knows. If your ballot has arrived today, fill that ballot in, get it posted off, get a happy CWU member collecting it and passing it off down the line tomorrow, and have those conversations at work. it is really, really hard when we've all been involved in dispute after dispute after dispute for what seems like forever, to muster up the courage to speak to that colleague, to put it in that work WhatsApp group, to make sure people have got their ballots, to help people apply for a replacement ballot if they need one. But the longer the fight goes on, the more important it is to win. The harder it is to win, the greater the stakes are. The stakes are high for UCU members, but they're high for equity members as well. And unless you win, unless the FBU wins, unless the RMT wins, and unless the NEU wins, our members aren't going to be winning either. Our sort of fortunes, if you like, are fundamentally bound up as a class and as a movement. Beating these draconian trade union legislation, the thresholds, the turnout requirements is so important. So if I've got anything to say to you, is that we will be there on those picket lines when you inevitably get that yes result. We will be with you in the pub when you inevitably win the pay rise you deserve and the guarantees around stability that you deserve. But we're only going to get there if every single one of us is out there talking to every UCU member we know, making sure that they're putting their X in the right box. So solidarity.
Thank you, Paul. And we hear so often when we do our GTVO that people don't want to hassle people. That's just what you have to do. We know that hassling people relentlessly until they say they put their ballot in the post box is pretty much the only way. So thank you all of you. What I want to do, because we've had some really good comments and questions come in whilst you've all been speaking. First of all, saying how great it is to hear from you all, but also asking some specific questions. So we've had a question about the media and how we get our message, our influence and vote in the media. So Daniel, I don't know if you want to offer something forward for this first. How do we increase our influence? How do we increase our message in the media? Oh, Daniel, you're on mute. You're on mute, my love.
Sorry. So, I mean, that's a really good question. It's important that we do everything we can really to get the message out there about the crisis broadly in education. Because I think, you know, when we do that, all history shows is that largely parents support us. They know what a valuable job that you do, what educators do throughout a child and young person's life. And, you know, I think are generally horrified when they do get informed about the scale of the crisis. You know, when we were in dispute in 2023, we found actually that of course, the Daily Mail and the Murdoch rags were out there attacking, but it had no transmission into wider society, I don't think, in any real meaningful way. I mean, everybody recognizes that schools and colleges were largely the hubs of their communities during the pandemic, and recognize what a valuable job that you do. But I think really just pointing to the scale of the crisis is the number one thing, really. And, you know, who in their right mind is going to accept a 1.4% pay award when inflation is at 4% now? But everybody recognizes that as a pay cut. You know, it shouldn't be some race to the bottom. You know, wages have over the last year largely risen in line with inflation. It's unacceptable, actually, that they're expecting you to take such a significant hit.
Exactly. I assure every UCU member, of which there are 1,500 watching along. Steve, what about you? What are your thoughts in terms of how we get our message out there and our influence?
Well, I think Paul mentioned this actually about the attacks that you will inevitably face, and that teachers will be called one thing, firefighters will be called another. That I think you need to understand you will be attacked for this, but the attacks coming from the people with their own end game, I suppose. And I think what you need to understand from us is that we understand the issues that you're facing, and we're right behind you. I think one thing though is the media is one thing, and you need to get that message across there. I think old school organising, about having those discussions with your workmates, whether it's outside of work, inside of work, in canteens or whatever, having those discussions amongst yourself about building that solidarity between yourselves about, look, you're doing it for the right reason, and not get brought into the attacks that you probably will face. And I think doing that, going back to meetings, holding meetings, and I think that Paul mentioned the CWU, the postal workers, how they all stand outside in their postal yards before they get in their vans and stuff, have a bit of a chinwag, have a chat about, look, what the issues are, what they're fighting for. Look, we do that on fire stations, sit and have a cup of tea and talk about the issues we face. Look, we know our arguments stack up. We could probably, your members would be able to argue with any MP, anyone in the press, from LBC or whoever wants to attack you, and have those arguments and win those arguments all day long. I think it's about that, getting your messaging clear, which you know all too well.
Excellent news that you're happy to be involved in a dust up for us, Steve. Thank you. Paul, what about you?
I mean, I think, well, both Daniel and Steve have said it, but let's not confuse the media for our communities or our movement. That is the really important thing. We'll obviously get some zingers. Jo will be on the telly. She'll say something, she'll trash whatever nonsense the interviewer comes out with. We'll all feel great. It's a great big morale boost. But that's not the real world. We know that students, we know that parents, we know that communities, we know that your next door neighbours want a pay rise. We know that they respect what you do. We know that the reason that people attack our members, they attack actors, it's because they're people who are respected for the work that they do. People who are admired for their sincerity because of what, but yet, whenever you get into the media, the conversation is about how our members are whinging lovies, or how it's all these lefty teachers again, or those entitled academics who shouldn't really be given any public funding. Let's not confuse what the media is. It's not real, and it's actually controlled by a voice that's a lot more hostile than our communities and your students. And indeed your colleagues. So yeah, as Steve says, go out there. It's much better to have got an extra 10 votes in that ballot than it is to have got 10 minutes on a hostile TV program.
I have to say I couldn't agree more with the kind of the vibe from all three speakers. The communities that we serve, whether it's our students or broader care, and organising and getting the message out there is much more important. We've had another question. Can we really pressure politicians? Are they listening? I'm just going to go in the order I did it last time. Daniel, Kia, is he listening? The rest of them, are they listening?
So I don't think we've got any choice but to force them to listen. I think the stakes are so high out there, actually, because this continual race to the bottom that working people have had to experience since the financial crisis, in which living standards are chipped away year after year, is leading to a Nigel Farage government and the rise of the far right broadly. So I would view what you are doing also in that context, that you have to fight for a decent pay award this year, because your fight will strengthen everybody else's fight in securing a decent pay award this year. Working people, regardless of what industry or sector that they work in, deserve to have a decent pay award this year. Everybody in this country who deserves to see their living standards begin to rise. As has been said in the speeches before, there is wealth. We are seeing a growth in billionaire wealth, while we're also seeing a rising levels of child poverty. Those two things are linked. Unless we sort out the grotesque wealth inequality that exists in this country, Nigel Farage is walking into number 10, and I think everybody is in trouble should that happen. So we have to make sure that this government listen. And if they don't listen, that means we're going to have to campaign, and also we're going to have to take industrial action. Because if we don't see living standards improve, the future is bleak.
Thanks, Daniel. Steve, do you want to offer some thoughts?
Yeah, well, echo what Daniel said, but I suppose just to make the point, it's not going to be easy, is it? I think we all expected a little bit more from a Labour government. We are a trade union that is affiliated to the Labour Party, and I think my reflections on being at Labour conference recently, they don't want us there. They don't want the voice of working people. They don't want the voice of a firefighter 25 years talking about the impacts of cuts in fire stations and in our communities. But look, I think that messaging cuts through. I don't think anyone can argue with your members when they try and cut your pay, when they try and attack your terms and conditions, when they try and force through job losses. That we will make people listen, and I think I suppose, without saying it is hard, that we'll do that as well. We will get opportunities within our areas of work to raise the issue that you're taking on at the moment, and I think that for me is around this wider area. And I don't know if we've done that brilliantly over the past. I want to make sure we're doing more of that. I think those of us on this call in our unions want to build that a little bit more, build that message about a better economy for working people. Daniel said, look, the wealth is out there. We need to start changing the messaging around that. So I think there's other elements to do. I think the fact that we don't have to rely on right-wing media and newspapers anymore. You can use platforms like this to get across to and speak to our members directly. Let's work around them and get in their faces a little bit more. Thanks, Joe.
Well, before I go to Paul, just say hi to Eddie. Hi, Eddie. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, Joe.
You all right?
Yeah.
We're just doing some answers to some questions from members, so I'll come to you, but I just wanted to give you a wave, given that you've joined us. Hello. Paul, is there anything you wanted to add?
Only briefly, that I think it's obviously hard when you're in the public sector, thinking about the government as politicians or as employers. And does it really matter if politicians do or don't listen to us, choose whether to platform us, choose whether to engage with us? Not really. Only the industrial power of the union matters in relation to the employer. That's why voting yes in these two ballots matters so much, to make sure that actually whoever your employer is, whichever HE or FE institution, they feel your power, not some local politician who may or may not give us the time of day. It's intimately linked to the earlier question about the media. Why do we want to have those conversations in the media, which is fundamentally hostile, when we can have them in our communities, which are fundamentally supportive? Why have them with politicians? Why make such an effort over trying to convince politicians who don't not believe us because our arguments aren't good or they've not encountered them? They don't believe us because their interests aren't aligned with ours, and they're fundamentally not on our side. So if we win industrially, we get those ballots in, we take that action, we do those deals, we start to change the fundamental economic precepts to which those politicians have to listen. So I think, the media is a distraction sometimes. Politicians are often a distraction, if not always. It's focus on that ballot and get that yes result, get that industrial action, and get that pay rise.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So I am going to let Paul, Steve, and Daniel. You've all been great. I'm going to bring Eddie in. Thanks so much. Go and have a lovely evening. And Steve, get out of the office, man. You go home or do something. Now, everyone, our final speaker has joined us. He is the leader of another fighting union, someone who is at the forefront of the recent London Underground dispute. He is another friend of UCU. He is one of the snappiest dressers around as well. Hey, look at you. Look at your braces. He is the General Secretary of the RMT. He is Eddie Dempsey. Eddie, welcome to UCU Live. Thank you so much for joining us. As you've heard, we are balloting members in further education from today. We are balloting our members in higher education from next week. Those ballots are going to be open for 5 to 6 weeks. So we're going to be concluding by the end of November. What is your message to our members?
Well, first of all, Joe, solidarity from the RMT and from all of our members. It's a really brave step you're taking, and it's important that you're taking this step, because the truth about our economy and our society works is you're not paid. Your wages are not paid according to the social value you create or the service you provide to society. Your wages depend upon the strength of your union organisation and the militancy in which you're prepared to take action. It's as simple as that, because if it was otherwise, you wouldn't be able to do this. You would be paid according to the huge value you bring to the economy, and so would nurses, and so would everybody else. So you have to use your industrial strength. If you don't, you'll be taken for granted, and you'll find yourself in a lot worse position than you might otherwise be. And I just wanted to make a couple of remarks. I don't know a great deal about higher education or further education. I know my industry, and I've got an idea about some of the problems we face as a country, some of the problems we face as a class, how we've got here and what we need to do to get out of it. And the truth of the matter is, we have got a structural problem with our economy that's been 40 years in the making. We've seen 40 years of neoliberalism and a market-led approach to absolutely everything in sight. And that's created a situation where even today, after all of the austerity bouts we've had, public spending is broadly at the same level it was prior Thatcher. What we've got is not a shrunken state, one that has been completely repurposed to serve the interests of finance capital. And as a result, our entire country's hollowed out and has been sold off. And all of our public institutions, all of our infrastructure has been decimated as a result of that, and so has the real economy. And a lot of our public spending and a lot of the activity of the state has been repurposed to serve the interests of the city. And in your sector, the market-led approach of student fees and everything else and privatisation has meant there's absolutely no direction to where your industry is supposed to point and what it's supposed to deliver. And we've seen some, I suppose, green shoots of realisation with this government that there is a structural problem. So we've now got discussion about having a industrial strategy aimed at growing key sectors of the economy. And one of the key features, while we haven't grown and the economy is not in the shape it's meant to be, is because we've had 40 years of low investment. We've had the lowest investment of any of the G7 countries. If we'd have kept pace on average with the other G7 countries, we'd have had 2 trillion more to spend in our infrastructure, in our schools, in our hospital, in our education, and in everything else, and in providing people decent employment. But that's not been the case. So if we are going to have more productivity, and if we are going to grow, and we're going to have an industrial strategy, all the things, by the way, that I agree with, I don't know how that's going to be delivered unless we've got a functioning education system to train and provide the skills and get our young people into those key sectors. It seems to me to be absolutely madness that you've got a government who've identified some really key important parts of our economy, such as the green transition, digital skills and other things like that, but are now prepared to allow our education provision to go by the wayside. It seems madness to me that we're not recruiting people as lecturers, as trainers, as educators to deliver those skills to people, to get them into those parts of the economy. In mine, we've got 50,000 skilled workers retiring in the next 5 years, and there's no plan to deliver the new skills into that sector. So how are we going to grow? How are we going to develop the real economy and see ourselves in a situation where we can actually have arguments that are beyond the very simplistic arguments around austerity? I don't have the answers because we seem to be in a doom cycle whereby we've got shrinking public spending in investment, which leads to low productivity, which leads to less money coming in, more borrowing, which leads to every budget, this argument about raising taxes and cutting public spending. And we just go around in circles. Unless we can actually deliver change and growth in the economy, we're going to find ourselves in this circle over and over again. So it's really important that you stand up for your sector. We're prepared to do the same in our sector. And frankly, for the past decades in this country, most of the media treat you as pariahs because you've got the temerity to stand up and say, we deserve a decent standard of living in this country as workers. And we can't let that argument go, because if we just allow ourselves to be pushed around by politicians, the media and everyone else, we're going to continue to see our living standards decline. We're going to continue to see our country basically be a collection of banks and everyone else attached to it. And we're going to get poorer. Our public services are going to get worse. Our education provision is going to get worse. Our public infrastructure is going to decay and fall away. And I actually want to see a change. So it's really important workers in key sectors of the economy, such as yours, are standing up for your sector. Look, I've been in many strikes, and we're not shy of it in the RMT. I just want to say to you, this can be a daunting moment for some if you've never been in dispute before. But the number one thing it's worth remembering is there's one thing more contagious than fear, and that's bravery. You've got to get out there and put the case to your members. The number one reason any member of any trade union does anything is because a local rep or another worker asked them to do it. We have got to get out there and put the message to all of our people, us in our industry and you in yours, that we ought to have some self-respect about ourselves. We don't have to put up with this nonsense. It is right, if we're going to work in a socially valued part of our economy, that we ought to have a decent standard of living. And in your sector, you ought to have a stable funding settlement that allows your sector to grow and deliver the skills the country needs. Otherwise, all of us are going to be in trouble, whether it's in other sectors or yours. And we don't have to listen to the nonsense of people saying there's no money and there's no means of doing things. You've only got to look at when there's a war on, or you've only got to look at when there's a crisis, when the banks go sideways. They soon find ways and means of getting money into the parts of the economy that they want to. Now, I've got faith in these people. They're problem solvers. So let's give them some problems to solve, in my opinion. And that's got to be addressing the work life and work standards of people that are going out to work in this country. And it's got to be rebalancing the economy to the productive economy so that we're growing and we're developing our country rather than selling it to the highest bidder in the markets. So I just want to congratulate all of you for the step you're taking. It's extremely brave. Don't bat an eyelid. Keep going. There's going to be lots of pressure all over the place. But the number one job at hand is to get a massive turnout in your votes. Vote early and vote often, and make sure you're out there undertaking all the activity in the workplaces to make sure people are joining in and participating in the ballot. And a lot of these ballots that we've got to do, thresholds and all of this stuff, I've never worried about any of that, me personally. The number one thing I want the ability to do is to be able to get from a position where you've got an argument with an employer into dispute at pace so you can set the tone. But we're going to be here in the background in the RMT. We'll support you with everything we can do. We'll make sure that if we get a shot, if I've got to speak to the media about anything, I'll try to give them a dig on your behalf. We'll windmill in behind you in all of the arguments. If I get to speak to ministers, I'll tell them straight, we expect you to sort out further education and higher education, because I don't know how you're going to deliver the skills in my sector or any other sector if you're allowing lecturers and educators to get burnt out, stressed out, massive turnover because people don't want to stay in the job because the wages are too low. If we're going to grow the economy, we've got to get wages up. We've got to get wages up in the key parts of the economy where it's needed. And we've got to address the imbalance of pay. So whilst you've got people at the top of your industry raking it in bonuses, the people that are out there delivering the training, education and courses, they're suffering, and this can't be right. So we're behind you all the way with this. I'll speak to Joe. We'll have a cup of tea later on this week to see what else we can do. But be proud of what you're doing. You're standing up as a group of workers and saying, we've actually got some self-respect here, but we think we ought to have a decent standard of living. And by the way, we're not beggars. We're prepared to bargain. And if we can't strike a deal that suits our members, then we're prepared to put up a fight and have the argument. And we need to see more of that because it spreads. Like I said, the one thing that's more contagious than fear is courage. And when workers in other sectors see you standing up for your members in the UCU, they'll be saying to their unions, we want to do the same thing. If they're prepared to go out and strike for a better wage, we should be too. If they're prepared to strike and fight for their sector and their industry, so should we. And I'm a firm believer that, it's not a cliche. Your fight is our fight. Because unless your sector's working and hopping, I don't know how we get our young people trained in the right places to deliver the growth that people need. And I've got no idea what this government thinks. On the one hand, having an industrial strategy to develop key parts of the economy, and at the same time is prepared to butcher the means to delivering those skills into those parts of the economy. So we're with you all the way. I congratulate you on taking this step. Keep going. Don't let the bastards grind you down. And remember, there's more of us than there is of them. And as long as we stand together and we stand shoulder to shoulder, there's no one that can beat us. All we've got to do is stand still. As Bill Haywood said, we've got to put our hands in our pockets and we've got them beat. Because at the end of the day, the simple fact is this: if those people at the top of the economy, the politicians and the rest of them, if they don't turn up for work tomorrow, no one will notice. If you don't turn up for work tomorrow, there's a crisis at hand, and they need to recognise your value. They need to recognise the importance of your sector. So get out there, get the voting, get people voting, and we'll be there to support you all the way.
Thank you so much, Eddie. And I have to say, when you were talking about the economy, I was nodding along with every single point, and I know UCU members will have been as well. So thank you for joining us. I really, really appreciate it. And I will be texting you for that cup of tea. See you, Eddie.
That's it. Come in, have the cup of tea. We'll have a chat. Solidarity, everyone. Keep going. Well,
thanks, Eddie. Bye. Amazing friend of UCU. Always absolutely love to hear from Eddie, and also from our other panelists, from Steve, from Daniel, and from Paul. Thank you so much for coming along. Now it's time for my final message to you. To our college members in England, the erosion of pay that you have experienced over the last 2 decades is absolutely shameful. A £7,000 pay gap with school teachers. Disgusting. The fact that many of you are not even getting the 4% that has been recommended is an absolute moral stain. And as we have heard from all of those speakers, and just then from Eddie, how on earth this government expects to deliver when our college lecturers are paid so poorly and are leaving the sector in droves. And that's just for starters. If you work in FE, you know how unmanageable the workload has become. And as I say, that's why 50% of our FE lecturers are leaving after 3 years in the job. But you do have the chance to do something about it on a mass scale. Ballot papers should have been arriving today if you're an FE member in England. We've heard it from Eddie. Vote yes, vote early. But then go out and make sure your colleagues do the same. There can be no corners cut in this ballot. There can be no conversations that we don't have. For our university members, for our HE members, we have 1 week until our ballot papers arrive. That is 7 more days to get out there, to convince somebody you know to join UCU. Because if they do that during the ballot, they will be able to vote. You need to convince fellow members who might be tired, who might have had enough, that they need to vote and that they need to vote yes. There's going to be videos from this live. Share that content, share other content, whether it's from the branch, from our national union. Make sure people know this ballot is happening, when it opens, and what the issues are. Attend local meetings in your branch. If there isn't a local meeting, set one up in your department, contact your reps. Offer to volunteer, get involved, and make sure you join us next Tuesday. We're going to be having a ballot day live. We want people to tell us where they're voting from, tell us that they voted yes, tell us who they have encouraged to vote. Because pay, workload, job security, it's all on the line. And the only way we tackle it, the only way that works, we've heard it from everyone tonight, is by winning this ballot. Nothing is more important right now. So I want to say again, thank you to everyone who has joined. We've had over 3,000 people watching tonight. Thank you to Eddie. Thank you to Steve. Thank you to Paul. Thank you to Daniel. Thank you to the tech team behind this live. Thank you to you for watching. Whether in FE, the job starts now. HE, the job has also begun. You need to be making sure people know about this ballot and they're voting in it. So thanks for joining. I will see you next week, Tuesday, 7 p.m. for the Higher Education Ballot Day Live. Bye.